Chapter 1. The Gathering Storm. The wind howled like a wounded beast through the ancient forests surrounding Blackwood Castle, whipping rain against the stone walls with relentless fury. Elara Voss clutched her threadbare cloak tighter around her shoulders, her boots sinking into the mud as she hurried along the servants' path. At 25, she had learned to move like a shadow, unseen, unheard, indispensable yet invisible. It was a skill born from necessity, honed in the ashes of a life she had fled 2 years ago. Back then, in the bustling human city of Eldridge, she had been promised to a man whose fists spoke louder than his vows. One night, after a particularly brutal beating, she had stolen away under cover of darkness, trading her name and her past for the anonymity of servitude in a remote kingdom whispered about in fearful tones. Blackwood was no ordinary realm. Ruled by King Thorne Blackwood, it was a place where legends of shapeshifters and ancient curses lingered like mist in the valleys. The nobles spoke of it in hushed voices, but Elara dismissed such tales as superstitions meant to keep the common folk in line. She had come here seeking refuge, not myths. As a chambermaid in the castle's lower halls, her days blurred into a rhythm of scrubbing floors, mending linens, and avoiding the leering eyes of the guards. It was a hard life, but it was hers, free from the chains of her old one. Tonight, however, the storm had other plans. The grand hall above buzzed with anticipation for the selection ceremony, where 50 noblewomen from across the allied packs — Elara had overheard the term packs used oddly among the courtiers — would vie for the Alpha King's favor. King Thorne, they said, was a man of unparalleled power, his kiss a seal of destiny. But Elara cared little for such pageantry. Her task was simple: deliver fresh linens to the guest quarters before the festivities began. As she rounded the corner of the outer bailey, a crack of lightning illuminated the sky, revealing a figure slumped against the base of an old oak tree. At first she thought it was a fallen branch, twisted and dark. But then it moved, a low, guttural growl escaping from what appeared to be an enormous wolf, its fur matted with blood and rain. Elara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Wolves were common in these woods, but this one was massive, its eyes glowing with an unnatural amber hue that pierced the darkness. Instinct screamed at her to run, but something held her in place. The beast's flank heaved with labored breaths, a deep gash running along its side, oozing dark blood that mingled with the mud. It wasn't attacking. It was dying. Elara's mind flashed to her own scars, the ones hidden beneath her sleeves from that fateful night in Eldridge. She knew pain when she saw it. "Easy there," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. Slowly she approached, dropping the bundle of linens to the ground. The wolf's head lifted, those piercing eyes locking onto hers. There was intelligence there, a plea that transcended animal instinct. Against all reason, Elara knelt beside it, her hands trembling as she tore a strip from her cloak. "You're hurt. Let me help." The wolf snarled weakly, but it didn't snap at her. Emboldened, she pressed the fabric against the wound, applying pressure as best she could. Rain soaked through her clothes, chilling her to the bone, but she didn't stop. "Shh, it's okay. I've got you." Words meant to soothe, though she wasn't sure if they were for the wolf or herself. Minutes stretched into an eternity until the bleeding slowed. The wolf's eyes fluttered, and for a moment, Elara swore she saw gratitude in them. Then, with a shudder, its form began to shift. Fur receding, limbs elongating in a blur of impossible motion. Elara gasped, scrambling back as the wolf transformed into a man. Naked, battered, and unmistakably human, he collapsed forward, his broad shoulders heaving. She stared in shock, her mind reeling. This couldn't be real. The legends. They were true? The man before her was tall, muscled like a warrior forged in battle, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and a jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Scars crisscrossed his torso, old and new, telling stories of fights she couldn't imagine. And those eyes, still that same amber glow, now fixed on her with intensity that made her pulse race. Who are you?" she stammered, her voice breaking. He tried to speak, but only a rasp escaped. With effort, he pushed himself up on one elbow, his gaze never leaving hers. "You shouldn't be here." he growled, his voice deep and commanding, laced with pain. Elara's fear mingled with defiance. Neither should you, it seems. You're the one bleeding out in the mud. A faint smile tugged at his lips, surprising her. Feisty for a servant girl. He winced, clutching his side where her makeshift bandage held. Thank you. Before she could respond, shouts echoed from the castle gates, guards' voices calling out in alarm. The king's missing. Search the grounds. The man's expression hardened. Go, now. Forget what you saw. But Elara couldn't move. There was something about him. A pull she couldn't explain, like an invisible thread drawing her closer. You're him, aren't you? King Thorne? His eyes narrowed, confirming her suspicion without words. The Alpha King, vulnerable and exposed before her. Rumors painted him as ruthless, a leader who commanded packs of shifters with iron will. Yet here he was, relying on her mercy. Help me up, he commanded, though his tone softened slightly. Elara hesitated, then slipped her arm under his, supporting his weight as he stood. He was heavy, all lean muscle and heat despite the cold rain. Their bodies pressed close, and a strange warmth bloomed in her chest, chasing away the chill. They stumbled toward a hidden alcove in the castle wall, one Elara knew from her late-night wanderings. Inside, sheltered from the storm, Thorne leaned against the stone, his breathing ragged. Why did you help me? He asked, his voice a low rumble. Elara met his gaze unflinching. Because I've been where you are. Hurt, alone, with no one to trust. And because... I don't know. It felt right. He studied her, as if seeing her for the first time. What's your name? Elara Voss. Elara, he repeated, the word rolling off his tongue like a caress. There was a flicker in his eyes, something primal, possessive, that sent a shiver down her spine. But then the shouts grew closer, and he straightened. You must leave. Tell no one of this. She nodded, but as she turned to go, his hand caught her wrist, gentle, yet firm. Wait, take this. He pressed a small silver amulet into her palm, etched with a wolf's head. If you need protection, show this. It bears my mark. Elara closed her fingers around it, the metal warm from his touch. Be careful, Your Majesty. With that, she slipped back into the storm, her mind a whirlwind. The king was a shifter, a werewolf if the tales were true. And she, a mere human servant, had saved him. What did that mean? As she hurried back to her quarters, the amulet heavy in her pocket, she couldn't shake the feeling that her quiet life had just shattered. Little did she know, in the shadows of the alcove, Thorne watched her go, his wolf stirring within. The scent of her, jasmine and rain, lingered, igniting a bond he had long denied. Fate had a cruel sense of humor, binding him to a human girl on the night he was meant to choose a mate from nobility. But the pull was undeniable, ancient magic whispering of souls entwined. The ceremony awaited, but Thorne's thoughts were no longer on the 50 noblewomen. They were on her, Elara, the servant who had knelt in the mud for a king. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Shadows. The grand hall of Blackwood Castle shimmered under the glow of 100 crystal chandeliers, their light dancing like fireflies on the polished marble floors. Laughter and murmurs filled the air, a symphony of silk gowns rustling and jewels clinking as the 50 noblewomen paraded before the throne. Each one was a vision of shifter elegance, high-born daughters from allied packs, their eyes gleaming with ambition and the subtle hint of their inner beasts. They had come from distant territories, bearing gifts of alliance and promises of strength, all vying for the Alpha King's kiss, a ritual that would seal a mate bond and secure the kingdom's future. Elara hovered at the edges of the opulent room, her servant's apron a stark contrast to the finery around her. She had slipped back into the castle unnoticed, her sodden clothes changed for dry ones, the amulet now hidden beneath her bodice, warm against her skin like a secret heartbeat. The storm still raged outside, thunder rumbling as if echoing her turmoil. What had she done? Saving a wolf, saving the king, had thrust her into a world she didn't understand. Shifters were real, not just tavern tales. And Thorne, his touch lingered in her memory, a spark that both terrified and intrigued her. Her duties kept her busy. refilling goblets of spiced wine, clearing empty platters, all while keeping her head down. But her eyes betrayed her, darting toward the throne where King Thorne sat, now fully composed in his regal attire. A black velvet tunic hugged his broad frame, embroidered with silver wolves that seemed to prowl across the fabric. His dark hair was slicked back, and the gash on his side, her bandage's work, was hidden beneath layers of cloth. He looked every inch the untouchable alpha, his amber eyes scanning the room with predatory focus. Yet, when their gazes met across the sea of nobility, time stuttered. Thorne's expression remained impassive to the onlookers, but Elara caught the subtle flicker, a softening at the corners of his mouth, a nod so slight it could have been imagined. Her cheeks flushed, and she quickly averted her eyes, busying herself with a tray of honeyed fruits. "Foolish girl," she chided herself. "He's the king. You're nothing but a shadow here." The ceremony progressed with formal grace. One by one, the noblewomen approached the throne, curtsying deeply and offering their hands. Thorne would lean forward, brushing his lips against their knuckles in a chaste kiss, testing for the spark of fate. Whispers rippled through the crowd with each rejection. No glow of magic, no surge of the bond. The women retreated with forced smiles, their disappointment masked by courtly poise. Elara watched from afar, a pang of something unfamiliar twisting in her gut. Jealousy? Ridiculous. She had no claim on him. As the night wore on, fatigue tugged at her. The hall grew warmer, the air thick with perfumes and the underlying scent of fur. Subtle, animalistic, reminding her of the wolf in the storm. During a brief lull, she slipped out to the servants' corridor for a moment of respite, leaning against the cool stone wall. Her hand drifted to the amulet, fingers tracing its edges. Why had he given it to her? Protection, he'd said. From what? Footsteps echoed down the hall, heavy and purposeful. Elara straightened, expecting a guard or another servant. But it was Thorne himself, emerging from a side door, his presence filling the narrow space like a storm cloud. He had shed his crown, and in the dim torchlight, he looked less like a king, and more like the wounded man she'd found, raw, vulnerable. "Your Majesty," she whispered, dropping into a hasty curtsy. Her heart raced, a mix of fear and that inexplicable pull. "Elara!" Her name on his lips sent a shiver through her. He closed the distance, his eyes searching hers. "You shouldn't be out here alone. The castle isn't safe tonight." She glanced up, confusion knitting her brows. "Safe from what?" "The noblewomen seem more interested in your throne than in harming servants." A low chuckle escaped him, deep and resonant. "Not them. There are tensions in the packs, rivals who see the selection as an opportunity to strike." He paused, his gaze dropping to where the amulet's chain peeked from her collar. "You're wearing it." She nodded, pulling it out slightly. "It feels important." "It is." Thorne reached out, his fingers brushing hers as he adjusted the chain. The contact was electric, warmth spreading from his touch like wildfire. Elara's breath caught, and she didn't pull away. "This amulet is tied to my bloodline. It marks you as under my protection. No shifter in Blackwood would dare harm you while you wear it." "Shifter," she echoed softly, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. She wanted to ask more, to confirm what she'd seen in the storm, but suspicion held her back. What if admitting she knew his secret put her in danger? Instead, she said, "Why me? I'm just a servant, a human one at that." Thorne's expression darkened, shadows playing across his features. "Humans have their place in our world, Elara, and you showed kindness when others would have fled." He stepped closer, the heat of his body chasing away the corridor's chill. "Tell me about yourself. Why did a city girl like you end up in Blackwood?" Elara hesitated, her past a wound she rarely prodded. But there was something in his eyes, genuine curiosity, perhaps even empathy, that coaxed the words from her. "I ran from a bad marriage. A man who thought love meant control, bruises instead of affection." Her voice trembled slightly, but she held his gaze. Blackwood was far enough that he couldn't follow. "Here, I'm invisible. Safe. Not invisible," Thorne murmured, his hand lingering near her cheek, though he didn't touch her. "Not to me." The air between them thickened, charged with unspoken tension. For a moment, Elara imagined what it would be like to lean into him, to let his strength envelop her. But reality intruded, the distant music from the hall reminding her of their worlds apart. A shout from the main chamber broke the spell. "The king! Where is the king?" Thorne swore under his breath. "I must return. The ceremony drags on." He turned to go, but paused, looking back. "Meet me tomorrow at dawn by the old oak where you found me. There's more I need to say." Elara's pulse quickened. "Why? What if someone sees?" "No one will. Trust me." His eyes held hers, amber depths swirling with secrets. Then he was gone, melting into the shadows like the wolf he was. She returned to her duties, her mind a whirl. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The noblewomen's advances met with Thorne's polite but firm rejections. By midnight, the hall emptied, the women retiring to their quarters with murmurs of discontent. No mate had been chosen, and the packs grew restless. In her small chamber that night, Elara tossed on her narrow bed, the amulet a comforting weight. Dreams came in fragments, golden eyes in the dark, a wolf's howl blending with a man's whisper. When dawn broke, gray and misty, she rose quietly, slipping out to the old oak. Thorne was there, waiting, dressed in simple hunting leathers that accentuated his powerful build. No crown, no guards, just him, leaning against the tree with a quiet intensity. "You came," he said, relief softening his voice. "I shouldn't have," Elara replied, but she stepped closer anyway. The forest around them was alive with birdsong, dew glistening on the leaves. "What do you want from me, Your Majesty?" "Thorne," he corrected gently. "Call me Thorne when we're alone." He gestured to a fallen log, and they sat, the space between them both a barrier and a bridge. "I want to know you, Elara. In a world full of politics and power plays, you treated me like a person, not a king, not a monster." "Monster?" She tilted her head, probing carefully. "Why would anyone call you that?" He looked away, jaw tightening. "Rumors, legends of curses and bloodlines. My family has ruled Blackwood for centuries, but it's not without cost. The full moon brings changes, responsibilities that weigh heavy." Elara's heart ached at the vulnerability in his tone. She thought of the wolf's pain, the shift she'd witnessed. But she kept silent, letting him reveal at his own pace. Instead, she shared more of her own scars. "In Eldridge, I felt like a prisoner. Every day, wondering if it would be my last. Running here was my only escape. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just hiding." Thorne turned to her, his hand covering hers on the log. "Hiding isn't weakness. It's survival. And perhaps fate brought you here for a reason." The word fate hung between them, heavy with implication. Elara felt it, a cosmic tug drawing her toward him despite the dangers. Their conversation flowed like a river, meandering through lighter topics, her love of stargazing, his hidden passion for carving wood. Laughter came unexpectedly when he described a disastrous hunt from his youth, and Elara found herself relaxing, the bond deepening with each shared glance. As the sun climbed higher, Thorne stood reluctantly. "I must go. Pack matters await." He helped her up, his touch lingering. "But this, us, it's not over." Elara nodded, a warmth blooming in her chest. But as he walked away, she noticed the way his shoulders tensed, as if carrying an unseen burden. The secret of his shifter nature loomed unspoken, a shadow over their growing connection. What would happen when it surfaced? And why did the thought of losing him already hurt so much? Back in the castle, whispers of unrest filtered through the servants' quarters. A rival pack leader, Darius from the Shadow Claws, had arrived unannounced, challenging the selection's delay. Tension simmered, and Elara couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with Thorne had set something irreversible in motion. Little did she know, as she went about her day, Thorne wrestled with his wolf's insistent growl. Mate. The human girl who had saved him was destined for more than servitude, but revealing the truth could shatter everything, or bind them forever. Chapter 3. Echoes of the moon, the days following their dawn meeting blurred into a haze of stolen glances and whispered secrets for Elara. Blackwood Castle, once a mere refuge, now felt alive with hidden currents, as if the very stones whispered of ancient pacts and forbidden desires. The unrest among the pack simmered like a pot on the verge of boiling over. Darius of the Shadow Claws had made his presence known, striding into the council chambers with an entourage of snarling warriors, demanding Thorne expedite the selection or face challenges to his rule. The noblewomen lingered, their elegant facades cracking with impatience, while servants like Elara bore the brunt of their frustrations. Extra duties, sharp words, endless errands, yet amidst the chaos, Elara found solace in the unexpected rhythm she shared with Thorne. He sought her out in subtle ways. A note slipped under her chamber door requesting her presence in the castle gardens after dusk, or a brief encounter in the kitchens where he feigned interest in the evening meal to exchange a few words. Each interaction chipped away at the walls between them, revealing layers of the man beneath the crown. Thorne spoke of his childhood in Blackwood's wilds, of losing his parents to a rival pack's ambush, leaving him to ascend the throne too young, too burdened. "Power isn't freedom," he confessed one evening as they walked the moonlit paths, the amulet glinting at her throat. "It's a cage lined with teeth." Elara listened, her own stories unfolding in return. She told him of her dreams in Eldridge. Simple ones, like owning a small herb garden, healing others with poultices instead of hiding her own wounds. "I used to think love was a myth," she admitted, her voice soft under the stars. "Something for nobles and their grand romances. But here, it feels possible." Their hands brushed as they walked, a tentative touch that sent sparks racing up her arm. Thorne's fingers lingered, intertwining with hers for a heartbeat before he pulled away, as if burned. But with the closeness came questions that gnawed at her. Thorne's behavior grew erratic as the full moon approached. Rumors among the servants spoke of it as a time of reckoning for the royal bloodline. He would disappear for hours into the forests, returning with dirt-streaked clothes and a haunted look in his eyes. Once she caught him in the stables, his hands clenched into fists, veins bulging as if fighting an invisible force. "Are you ill?" she asked, concern etching her features as she approached. He whirled, his amber eyes flashing with something feral, wild, untamed. For a split second, Elara swore they glowed, reflecting the lantern light like a predator's in the night. "Stay back," he growled, his voice deeper, rougher than usual. Sweat beaded on his brow, and he gripped the stable door so hard the wood creaked. "It's nothing, just old wounds acting up." She didn't believe him. The memory of the wolf in the storm resurfaced, vivid and insistent. The way his body had contorted, fur giving way to skin. It couldn't be coincidence. And the amulet, it warmed against her chest during these moments, as if pulsing in sync with his distress. "Thorne, you can tell me," she pressed gently, stepping closer despite his warning. "Whatever it is, I won't judge. I've seen pain before. Let me help." He softened at her words, the tension easing from his shoulders. "You already have, more than you know." He reached out, cupping her cheek with a tenderness that belied his earlier ferocity. His thumb traced her jawline, and Elara leaned into the touch, her breath mingling with his. The air crackled with unspoken desire, a slow-burning fire that threatened to consume them both. But he pulled back again, his expression pained. "Not yet. There are things, secrets that could change everything." Elara's curiosity burned brighter, laced with a growing suspicion. Why the secrecy? What was he hiding that made him pull away just as they grew closer? She noticed other oddities. The way animals in the castle grounds reacted to him. Horses whinnying nervously, dogs baring teeth before submitting with whimpers. Even the noblewomen whispered of the king's beast, their eyes darting fearfully toward the full moon's waxing glow. One afternoon, while tending to linens in the guest wing, Elara overheard two of them gossiping. "He's cursed, you know," Lady Isolde murmured to her companion, her voice a conspiratorial hiss. "The Blackwood line, tied to the moon's cycle. They say he shifts under its light, becoming something inhuman." "Nonsense," the other replied, though her tone lacked conviction. "But have you seen his eyes? Like a wolf's. And no mate chosen yet. Perhaps the fates deny him because of it." Elara's hand stilled on the folded sheets, her heart pounding. Shifts, wolf, it fit, the transformation she'd witnessed, the growls that sometimes edged his laughter. Was Thorne not just a king, but a creature of legend? A werewolf bound by ancient magic? The thought should terrify her. A human outsider in this shifter realm. Yet it drew her in, a puzzle begging to be solved. If true, it explained his guarded heart, his reluctance to fully open up. He was protecting her from himself? That evening, as the sun dipped low, Thorne found her in the herb garden, kneeling among the lavender and rosemary. The scents calmed her racing thoughts, but his arrival stirred them anew. He knelt beside her, his presence a comforting weight. "You've been distant today," he observed, plucking a sprig of mint and twirling it between his fingers. Elara looked up, meeting his gaze. "Just thinking. About you. About us." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "You pull me close, then push away. Is it because of what happened that night in the storm?" His jaw tightened, the mint crushed in his grip, releasing a sharp aroma. "That night, you saw more than you should have. But Elara, it's complicated. My world isn't like yours. There are rules, dangers, things that could hurt you." "Like what?" she challenged softly, her hand covering his. "Tell me. Trust me. Like I trusted you with my past." Thorne's eyes searched hers, conflict warring within. He leaned in, their foreheads nearly touching, breath sinking in the twilight hush. "I want to. Gods, I do. But if I reveal it all, you might run. And I couldn't bear that." The vulnerability in his voice cracked something in her. A flood of empathy, of longing. She closed the distance, her lips brushing his in a tentative kiss. It was soft, exploratory, tasting of mint and unspoken promises. Thorne froze for a moment, then responded with a gentleness that belied his strength, his arms wrapping around her waist to pull her closer. The world faded, the garden, the castle, the secrets, leaving only the heat of their connection, a bond forging in the quiet spaces between heartbeats. But as the kiss deepened, a low rumble escaped his throat, almost a growl. He broke away abruptly, standing and pacing a few steps. "See, this is what I mean. I lose control around you." Elara touched her lips, dazed but undeterred. "Control isn't everything, Thorne. Sometimes letting go is healing." He turned back, his expression a mix of desire and torment. "Meet me tomorrow night, in the forest clearing beyond the oak. The moon will be full. Perhaps then, I can show you the truth." Her pulse quickened at the invitation, suspense coiling like a spring. The full moon, tied to the legends, to his changes. What would she witness? And how would it change them? As he left, Elara remained in the garden, the amulet humming against her skin. Suspicion bloomed into determination. She would uncover his secret not to flee, but to stand by him. But shadows lurked. Darius's spies watched from afar, sensing weakness in the king's distraction. The pack's unrest grew, and Elara unwittingly stood at the heart of it all. That night, dreams plagued her. Thorne's form twisting under moonlight, amber eyes pleading for acceptance. When morning came, the castle buzzed with preparations for a grand hunt, a distraction from the stalled selection. But Elara's thoughts were on the clearing, on the revelation awaiting. The bond deepened, but so did the dangers, pulling them toward a precipice where truth could either unite or destroy. Chapter 4. Veils of Silver Light. The full moon hung low in the sky like a silver medallion, casting an ethereal glow over the forest that bordered Blackwood Castle. Elara moved through the underbrush with cautious steps, her cloak hood pulled low to shield her face from the chill night air. The woods were alive with nocturnal whispers, crickets chirping in rhythmic cadence, leaves rustling as if sharing secrets, and distant howls that sent shivers racing down her spine. Those howls. They sounded almost human, laced with longing and pain. She clutched the amulet tighter, its warmth a beacon in the darkness, guiding her toward the clearing Thorne had described. Her mind raced with anticipation and dread. What truth awaited her? The pieces were falling into place. His disappearances, the feral glint in his eyes, the overheard whispers of curses and shifts. If Thorne was indeed a shifter, a werewolf, bound to the moon's whims, it explained the barriers he erected between them. But it also terrified her. She was human, an outsider in this world of packs and primal instincts. Could she accept him, beast and all? Or would the revelation drive a wedge too deep to bridge? As she emerged into the clearing, a wide meadow ringed by ancient pines, she spotted him. Thorne stood in the center, bathed in moonlight, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the taut lines of his chest. He paced slowly, his movements fluid yet tense, like a predator on the edge of restraint. When he saw her, his face lit with a mix of relief and apprehension. "Elara," he breathed, closing the distance in long strides. "You came." "I wasn't sure you would." She lowered her hood, meeting his gaze. The amber in his eyes seemed brighter under the moon, almost luminous. "I had to. Whatever this is between us, I need to understand it." He nodded, gesturing for her to sit on a moss-covered boulder at the clearing's edge. They settled side by side, the space between them charged with unspoken words. The moon climbed higher, its light filtering through the branches like threads of fate weaving around them. Thorne took a deep breath, his hand finding hers in the grass. "Before I show you, I need you to know why I've kept this hidden. It's not just about trust, it's about protecting you." "From what?" Elara asked, her fingers curling around his. His skin was feverish, hotter than usual, as if a fire burned within. "From my world. From me." He stared at the moon, his profile sharp in the silver glow. "Blackwood isn't like Eldridge. Here, bloodlines carry ancient magic, soul bonds, transformations tied to the lunar cycle. My family has borne this for generations. It's a gift and a curse, making us stronger but also unpredictable." Ilara's heart quickened. Transformations. The word echoed her suspicions, but she held back, letting him unfold at his pace. "Unpredictable how? You've never hurt me, Thorne." "Not yet," he murmured, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. The touch was intimate, grounding them both. But the pull of the moon, it amplifies everything. Instincts, desires, rage. I've lost control before. Fought battles within myself that left scars deeper than any blade. He lifted his shirt slightly, revealing the gash from the storm night, now healed to a faint line. "That wound wasn't from an enemy. It was from resisting the change, from denying what I am." She reached out, her fingers tracing the scar lightly. Thorne inhaled sharply at the contact, his eyes darkening with something raw and vulnerable. "You're not a monster," she said firmly, echoing his earlier words. "Whatever this change is, it doesn't define you. I've seen your kindness, your strength. The man who listens to my stories, who laughs at my silly herb garden dreams, that's who you are." Thorne turned to her, his free hand cupping her face. "You see me, Elara. Truly see me, when others only see the crown or the power." His voice dropped to a whisper, laced with emotion. "In all my years as Alpha, no one has made me feel human. Not like this." The confession hung between them, deepening the bond like roots entwining underground. Elara leaned into his palm, her eyes fluttering shut for a moment. "I feel it too. This connection, it's like fate, isn't it? Pulling us together despite everything." "Fate," he repeated, his breath warm against her forehead. "In shifter lore, there's something called a fated mate. A soul bond that transcends packs, even species. It's rare, sacred. When it happens, it's undeniable, like a storm you can't outrun." His gaze intensified, searching hers. "From the moment you helped me in the mud, I felt it. But you're human. If I claim it, if I reveal all, it could endanger you. The packs wouldn't accept it easily." Elara's pulse thrummed with a mix of fear and exhilaration. A fated mate? The idea resonated, explaining the magnetic pull, the way his touch ignited her soul. But suspense coiled tighter. What did the revelation entail? She squeezed his hand. "Show me, Thorne. Let me decide." He hesitated, the moon now directly overhead, its light intensifying. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple, and his muscles tensed under her touch. "Once you see, there's no going back. Promise me you'll run if it scares you. I won't chase. Not if it means your harm." "I promise," she lied softly, knowing in her heart she couldn't flee from him. "Not now." Thorne stood, stepping back into the center of the clearing. He shed his shirt, the moonlight sculpting his form in stark relief. Muscles honed by battles, scars mapping a life of struggle. Elara's breath caught, admiration mingling with concern. He closed his eyes, hands clenching at his sides. "The change comes with the moon's peak. It's painful but necessary, watch, and remember who I am." At first nothing happened. Then a low growl rumbled from his chest, building like thunder. His body shuddered, veins bulging as if lightning coursed through them. Elara rose, instinctively reaching out, but he held up a hand. "Stay back." The transformation began subtly, his nails lengthening, sharpening into claws. Fur sprouted along his arms, dark and sleek, spreading like shadows claiming the light. His bones cracked audibly, reshaping with agonizing pops that made Elara wince. He dropped to his knees, his face contorting, jaw elongating into a muzzle. Amber eyes locked on hers, pleading as his humanity gave way to the beast. Within moments, the man was gone. In his place stood a massive wolf, larger than the one from the storm, its coat midnight black with silver tips that gleamed under the moon. The wolf, Thorne, panted heavily, shaking off the remnants of the shift. Those familiar amber eyes stared back at her, intelligence and emotion shining through the primal form. Elara's world tilted. Confirmation of her suspicions hit like a wave, but seeing it anew under this sacred light was overwhelming. Fear flickered, but it was drowned by compassion, by the bond that refused to break. "Thorne," she whispered, taking a tentative step forward. The wolf whined softly, lowering its head in submission, ears flattening. It didn't approach, giving her space, honoring her promise, but Elara couldn't run. Instead, she knelt, extending a hand. "It's you. Really you." Slowly, the wolf padded closer, nuzzling her palm with its wet nose. The fur was soft, warm, and beneath it, she felt the same heartbeat, the same soul. Tears pricked her eyes as she stroked its flank, the amulet pulsing in harmony. "I see you," she murmured. "All of you." They stayed like that for what felt like hours, the wolf curling protectively around her as she sat in the grass. No words were needed. The bond deepened in silence, trust solidifying like forged steel. But as the moon began its descent, Thorne shifted back, the process reversing with equal pain. Naked and exhausted, he collapsed beside her, pulling her into his arms. "Thank you," he rasped, holding her close, "for not running." Elara nestled against him, her head on his chest. "I couldn't, fate, remember?" But even as warmth enveloped them, shadows lingered. Darius's challenges loomed, the pack's unrest brewing. And now, with the secret unveiled, new dangers emerged. What if others discovered their bond? As dawn hinted on the horizon, Thorne helped her up. "We must return separately. But tomorrow, we talk about what this means." Elara nodded, stealing one last kiss, a promise of more. Yet as she slipped back toward the castle, a rustle in the bushes caught her ear. Eyes watched from the darkness, Darius's spies perhaps. Suspense thickened. The secret was out between them, but the world waited to tear it apart. Chapter 5. Fractured Loyalties. The morning after the full moon revelation dawned crisp and clear, the forest around Blackwood Castle shedding its nocturnal mysteries like dew evaporating under the sun. Elara woke in her modest chamber, the events of the clearing replaying in her mind like a vivid dream. Thorne's shift, the agony in his transformation, the trust in his wolf's eyes as it nuzzled her hand, had shattered any lingering doubts. He was a shifter, an alpha werewolf bound by ancient lore, and yet, in that vulnerability, he had become more human to her than ever. The bond between them felt tangible now, a living thread that tugged at her heart with every breath. But with acceptance came new fears. As she dressed for her duties, the amulet lay heavy against her skin, a reminder of the dangers Thorne had hinted at. The Pax wouldn't accept a human mate, he'd said. Fated or not, their worlds were divided by blood and tradition. Elara pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the warmth of his embrace after the shift, the way he'd held her as if she were his anchor in a stormy sea. She found him later that afternoon in the castle's library, a vast room lined with leather-bound tomes that smelled of aged paper and secrets. Thorne sat at a carved oak table poring over maps of the kingdom's borders, his brow furrowed in concentration. Guards stood at the doors, but he dismissed them with a wave when he saw her enter, carrying a tray of tea as her excuse for the visit. "Elara," he greeted, his voice a low rumble that sent a familiar shiver through her. He stood, taking the tray and setting it aside, his hands lingering on hers. "I wasn't sure you'd come after last night." She met his gaze, those amber eyes now soft with concern. "How could I not? Seeing you like that, it didn't change anything. If anything, it made me understand you more." Thorne pulled her into a gentle embrace, his arms wrapping around her waist. She melted against him, inhaling his scent, wood smoke and pine, with an undercurrent of something wild. "You have no idea what that means to me," he murmured into her hair. "For years I've hidden this part of myself, even from those closest to me. The curse of the Blackwood line, it's not just the shift, it's the isolation it brings." They sat together on a worn velvet settee by the window, sunlight streaming in to highlight the dust motes dancing in the air. Elara poured the tea, their fingers brushing in a dance of casual intimacy. "Tell me more about the curse," she encouraged softly. "How did it start?" Thorne sipped his tea, his expression distant as he delved into the past. "Legends say it began centuries ago with my ancestor, King Alvar. He made a pact with the moon goddess for strength to protect his people from invading forces. In return, his bloodline would forever bear her mark, the ability to shift, to harness the wolf's power. But it came with rules. We must mate within our kind to keep the line pure, or risk madness, weakening the pack bonds." He paused, his hand finding hers again. "I've resisted choosing a mate from the nobles because none sparked the fated bond, until you." Elara's heart swelled at his words, the cosmic pull he'd described now echoing in her own soul. "And if we pursue this, what happens?" His thumb traced circles on her palm, a soothing rhythm that belied the storm in his eyes. "The packs could rebel. Darius of the Shadow Claws already challenges my rule, claiming I'm unfit without a proper queen. If they learn of us, a human servant, they'd see it as weakness, an invitation for war." The weight of his words settled over them, but Elara refused to let fear dominate. She leaned closer, her free hand resting on his knee. "Then we face it together. I've run from danger before, Thorne, but with you, I want to stand and fight." A small smile broke through his worry, and he cupped her face, drawing her in for a kiss. It was deeper than before, laced with the passion they'd held back, a slow exploration of lips and breaths, his hands threading through her hair. Elara responded with equal fervor, her body arching toward him, the bond igniting like embers fanned to flame. When they parted, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "You're braver than any warrior I've known. In you, I see healing. For my scars. For the loneliness that's plagued me since my parents' death." Elara shared more of her own wounds then, the details she'd skimmed before. "My betrothed in Eldridge. He wasn't just cruel. He broke me piece by piece until I forgot who I was. Running here was my rebirth, and now with you, I feel whole again." Tears glistened in her eyes, but they were cathartic, a release of pent-up pain. Thorne wiped them away gently, his touch reverent. "We'll heal each other, Elara, step by step." They talked for hours, the tea growing cold as they wove stories of their lives, his battles against rogue shifters, her quiet moments of solace in the city gardens. Laughter mingled with the serious, like when Thorne recounted a failed attempt at diplomacy that ended in a mud wrestling match with a bear shifter ally. Elara's giggles filled the room, a sound that seemed to lighten his burdens. But as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the library, reality intruded. A knock at the door heralded a messenger, his face pale. "Your Majesty, Darius requests an audience. He brings accusations of divided loyalties." Thorne's demeanor shifted instantly, the alpha emerging, shoulders squaring, eyes hardening. He stood, pulling Elara up with him. "Stay hidden. This could get ugly." She nodded, slipping behind a bookshelf as Darius entered, flanked by 2 burly guards. The rival leader was a towering figure, his red hair braided like a warrior of old, scars marring his face. "Thorne," he growled, foregoing formalities. "The selection drags on, and whispers reach me of your distractions. A human servant. Is this how you honor our traditions?" Elara's blood ran cold. How did he know? Spies, perhaps, the rustle in the bushes last night. Thorne remained composed, his voice steady. My personal matters are none of your concern, Darius. The mate bond is sacred. I won't force it for politics. Darius laughed, a harsh bark. Sacred? You're diluting the bloodline with a weakling outsider. The packs grow restless. If you don't choose soon, I'll challenge you under the old laws. Trial by combat. Winner takes the throne. The threat hung heavy, and Elara peeked through the shelves, her heart aching at Thorne's tension. He stepped forward, aura commanding, Leave, before I remind you why I'm alpha. Darius sneered but retreated, his parting words a venomous whisper. The full moon's power fades, but secrets don't. Choose wisely, or lose everything. Once alone, Thorne sagged against the table, the weight of his role crashing down. Elara emerged, wrapping her arms around him from behind. I'm sorry. This is because of me. He turned, holding her close. No. It's because of outdated rules that blind them to true strength. But doubt flickered in his eyes, a hidden turmoil. Was there more to the curse he hadn't shared? A deeper secret about the fated bond with a human, perhaps a forbidden aspect that could doom them both? As evening fell, Thorne escorted her back to her quarters discreetly, their fingers entwined until the last moment. We need time to think, he said, his voice laced with sacrifice. For your safety, maybe we should— Don't say it, Elara interrupted, kissing him fiercely. We'll find a way. But as he left, suspense gnawed at her. Darius's knowledge meant betrayal lurked within the castle walls. And Thorne's hesitation hinted at unspoken truths. Perhaps the bond carried risks he hadn't revealed, like a transformation that could affect her too. That night, as howls echoed from the forests, Elara lay awake, the amulet glowing faintly. The bond deepened, but so did the fractures, leading toward a choice that could shatter their worlds. Chapter 6. Shadows of Doubt. The castle corridors felt narrower in the days following Darius's confrontation, as if the walls themselves conspired to close in on Elara and Thorne's fragile secret. Whispers slithered through the halls like serpents. Servants, gossiping about the Alpha's unexplained absences. Noblewomen plotting alliances to sway the selection, and guards patrolling with heightened vigilance. Elara moved through her routines with mechanical precision, scrubbing hearths and mending tapestries, but her mind was elsewhere, tangled in the web of their deepening bond and the threats that loomed. Thorne had insisted on caution, limiting their meetings to fleeting moments, a brush of hands in the stables, a shared glance across the bustling courtyard. Yet, each encounter fueled the fire between them, a slow simmer that promised to boil over. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of bruised purple, he pulled her into a secluded alcove behind the armory. The air was thick with the scent of oiled leather and iron, a stark contrast to the softness of his touch as he drew her close. I've missed you, he murmured, his lips grazing her temple. His arms encircled her, strong and reassuring, but Elara felt the subtle tremor in his frame, the strain of holding back his wolf's instincts. I've missed you too, she replied, tilting her head to meet his eyes. Those amber depths held a storm of emotions, desire, protectiveness, and a shadow of doubt that mirrored her own. But Thorne, Darius knows something. How much longer can we hide this? He sighed, resting his forehead against hers. Not long. The packs convene in 3 days for the Lunar Council. I'll have to announce a decision on the mate selection then. His hands trailed down her arms, intertwining their fingers. But I won't choose anyone but you. Fate has marked us. The bond is real. I feel it in my blood, stronger every day. Elara's heart ached at his words, a sweet pain that spoke of love blossoming amid thorns. The fated mate connection he'd described wasn't just lore. It pulsed between them, an invisible current that made her skin tingle at his proximity. And if they reject it? Reject me? Then we fight, he said fiercely, cupping her face. You're not just a human to me, Elara. You're my equal, my salvation. Before you, I was adrift, ruling with an iron fist to mask the emptiness inside. His voice cracked slightly, revealing the depth of his vulnerability. The curse. It doesn't just force the shift, it amplifies loneliness, turning the wolf's howl into a cry for connection. You've quieted that cry. Tears welled in her eyes as she pulled him into a kiss, slow and tender at first, then deepening with the urgency of stolen time. His lips moved against hers with a hunger tempered by restraint, his hands roaming her back as if memorizing her curves. Elara clung to him, losing herself in the heat of the moment, the world narrowing to the rhythm of their breaths. When they broke apart, she whispered, "You've given me purpose too. In Eldridge I was broken, hiding from shadows. Here, with you, I feel seen, valued for who I am, not what I can provide." They lingered in the alcove, sharing stories in hushed tones. Thorne spoke of his internal battles, the nights when the wolf's rage threatened to consume him, fueled by the curse's demand for a mate. "It's like a storm inside," he confessed, his head in her lap as she stroked his hair. "The bond with you calms it, but if unclaimed, it could drive me mad." Elara's fingers paused, a chill creeping in. "Unclaimed? What do you mean?" He hesitated, his eyes flickering away, a telltale sign of withheld truth. The lore says a fated bond must be sealed under the next full moon, or the curse twists it. For a shifter and human, there might be consequences. Changes. "Changes?" she pressed, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. Suspense coiled. Anew. Was this the deeper secret he'd hinted at? Could the bond alter her, pull her into his world in ways she couldn't imagine? Thorne sat up, taking her hands. "I don't know everything. Ancient texts are vague. Warnings of shared shifts, or worse, rejection by the magic itself. That's why I've been researching, poring over scrolls in the library. I won't risk you without answers." His honesty deepened their trust, but it also sowed seeds of doubt. Elara nodded, forcing a smile. "We'll find the answers together." But inwardly she wondered, what if the bond demanded more than she could give? The thought of transforming, of losing her humanity, terrified her. Yet the idea of losing him was unbearable. As night fell, they parted with a lingering embrace, Thorne slipping away to attend a strategy meeting with his advisors. Elara returned to her quarters, the amulet glowing faintly against her skin, as if echoing her turmoil. Sleep evaded her, replaced by visions of wolves under moonlight, their howls a symphony of longing and warning. The next day brought escalation. While delivering linens to the guest wings, Elara overheard Darius in heated discussion with Lady Isolde, one of the lingering noblewomen. "The Alpha weakens," Darius snarled, his voice carrying through a cracked door. "Consorting with a human? It's blasphemy against the bloodline. If he won't step aside, we'll force his hand, expose the girl, use her as leverage." Isolde's laughter was cold. "And if the bond is true, the curse could lash out." "That's the beauty," Darius replied. "A human can't survive the sealing ritual. She'll break, and so will he." Ilara's blood turned to ice. A ritual? Survival? She fled the hall, heart pounding, seeking Thorne in the training grounds where he sparred with his warriors. He dismissed them upon seeing her pale face, leading her to a quiet corner. "What is it?" he asked, concern etching his features. "I heard Darius. Something about a sealing ritual, that I won't survive it." Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze. "Is that the consequence you mentioned? Tell me the truth, Thorne. All of it." He paled, pulling her into his arms. "I didn't want to scare you. The ritual. It's to formalize the mate bond, binding our souls under the moon. For shifters, it's ecstatic. But for a human, the texts warn of pain, of the magic testing your resolve. Some say it could trigger a shift in you, or reject the bond entirely, severing us forever. Elara stepped back, processing the revelation. The secret unfolded further. Not just his identity, but the perilous path their love demanded. And if it rejects us? Thorne's eyes darkened with pain. I could lose control permanently, the wolf dominating. Or worse, you'd be cast out, unprotected from the packs. The weight of it pressed on her, but so did the strength of their connection. She took his hand, squeezing it. Then we prepare. Research more, find a way to make it safe. I won't let fear steal this from us. He kissed her knuckles, gratitude shining in his eyes. Your courage humbles me. Meet me tonight in the library. We'll search the forbidden archives together. As the day waned, their bond grew through shared resolve, intimate conversations blending with touches that spoke of deepening affection. But suspense mounted. Darius's plots, the ritual's risks, and the unspoken question. What if the curse hid even darker truths? That night, as they pored over dusty tomes by candlelight, a servant's urgent knock interrupted. Your Majesty, intruders at the borders, Shadowclaw scouts. They're probing for weaknesses. Thorne stood, the alpha mask descending. Stay here, Elara. It's not safe. But as he left, she clutched a scroll detailing the ritual, its words hinting at a sacrificial element. The dangers closed in, testing their love, leading toward a betrayal that could shatter everything. Chapter 7. Whispers of Sacrifice. The clang of steel and urgent shouts echoed through the castle as Thorne rallied his warriors to confront the Shadowclaw scouts at the borders. Elara remained in the library, her fingers tracing the brittle pages of the ancient scroll she'd clutched during the interruption. The candle flames danced erratically, casting flickering shadows that mirrored her inner turmoil. The ritual's description was cryptic. Phrases like blood shared under the moon's gaze and the human vessel tested by fang and fire, hinting at perils that went beyond mere pain. What if the ceiling demanded a piece of her soul? Or worse, what if it awakened something dormant within her, tying her forever to the shifter world? Hours passed in agonizing solitude before Thorne returned, his hunting leathers torn and speckled with dirt, a fresh cut above his brow already healing with unnatural speed. He dismissed the guards at the door and crossed to her in swift strides, pulling her into his arms without a word. Elara buried her face in his chest, inhaling the metallic tang of battle mixed with his familiar wild scent. Are you hurt? She whispered, her hands roaming his back to check for wounds. Nothing that won't mend, he replied, his voice a gravelly murmur. He tilted her chin up, his amber eyes scanning her face with concern. But you, waiting here alone. I hated leaving you. She shook her head, though her heart still raced from the fear of losing him. The scroll, it speaks of a test, blood, fire. Thorne, what aren't you telling me? Is the ritual dangerous for me specifically because I'm human? He guided her back to the settee, sitting close enough that their thighs touched, a constant point of contact that grounded them both. The texts are old, written in riddles to protect the knowledge. From what I've pieced together, the ceiling binds our life forces. For two shifters, it's harmonious, but with a human. The magic might demand a transformation, a partial shift to align our souls. His hand covered hers, warm and steady. It could change you, Elara, give you enhanced senses, strength, or reject you entirely, causing agony that no healer can soothe. Elara's breath hitched, the suspense of the unknown twisting like a knife. A partial shift? The idea both intrigued and horrified her. She imagined fur rippling across her skin, claws emerging from her fingers. Would she lose herself in the process? And if it rejects me, what happens to you? Thorne's grip tightened, his eyes darkening with unspoken torment. The curse would amplify. The wolf could take over, turning me feral. I'd be a danger to everyone, including you. He paused, vulnerability etching lines on his face. That's why I've hesitated. Loving you means risking everything, but not loving you. That's a fate worse than madness. The confession hung between them, raw and profound. Elara leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss that started as comfort and bloomed into something deeper, a silent vow. His arms encircled her, one hand cradling, the back of her head as he responded with restrained passion, as if savoring every moment. When they parted, she rested her head on his shoulder. We've both been running from our pains. You from the isolation of your curse, me from the bruises of my past. But together, we could face this. Tell me more about the ritual. Help me understand. Thorne nodded, pulling another tome from the shelf. A heavy volume bound in wolf hide, its pages yellowed with age. They huddled over it, his arm around her shoulders, their heads close as he translated the archaic script. It requires a circle of silver under the full moon, our blood mingled in a chalice. We drink, and the magic judges the bond's purity. If accepted, the soul bond forms, eternal, unbreakable. We'd feel each other's emotions, share strengths. As he spoke, Elara felt the bond strengthening, their proximity weaving invisible threads of intimacy. She shared a memory she'd buried deep. The night she fled Eldridge, hiding in a rain-soaked alley, vowing never to trust again. But with you, she said softly, trust feels natural, like coming home. Thorne's eyes softened, and he kissed her forehead. Home, that's what you are to me. In the midst of pack wars and court intrigues, you're my peace. He recounted a rare, joyful memory from his youth, running through the forests as a pup with his mother, before the ambush that stole his family. She taught me that true strength lies in vulnerability. I forgot that until you. Their conversation flowed into the late hours, laughter punctuating the seriousness when Thorne mimicked Darius's pompous snarls, easing the tension. Elara traced the scars on his arms, each one a story he shared willingly now, deepening their emotional connection. But beneath the warmth, suspense simmered. The ritual's risks loomed, and Thorne's occasional hesitations suggested there was more. Did the curse hide a darker clause? Perhaps a sacrifice that could claim one life for the bond? A soft knock interrupted. Them, a trusted advisor, Liam, Thorne's beta and childhood friend. Sire, the scouts are repelled, but Darius sends a message. He demands a private parley tomorrow, or he'll rally the other packs against you. Thorne's jaw clenched, the alpha surfacing. Tell him I'll meet him at the neutral glade at dawn. Alone. Liam bowed and left, but Elara caught the worry in Thorne's eyes. Alone? It's a trap. Perhaps, he admitted, pulling her close again. But I must show strength. Stay vigilant tomorrow. If anything happens, use the amulet to summon my loyalists. She nodded, though fear gnawed at her. As they parted for the night, Thorne escorted her to her chamber, their goodnight kiss lingering with promise and peril. Dream of us, he whispered, of a future where we're free. In her bed, Elara tossed, the scroll's words haunting her dreams, visions of bloodied moons and shifting forms. By morning, the castle buzzed with tension as Thorne departed for the parley. Elara busied herself in the kitchens, but her mind wandered to the glade, imagining worst-case scenarios. Hours later, Thorne returned unscathed but brooding, seeking her out in the herb garden. He pulled her behind a trellis of blooming vines, his embrace urgent. Darius knows about the ritual. He taunts me with it, says the curse will consume us both if we proceed. How? Elara gasped, her hands on his chest. Spies, traitors in our midst. Thorne's eyes flashed with anger, but he softened, cupping her face. He offered an alliance. Marry Isolde, unite the packs, and he'll withdraw. But I refused. You're my choice, Elara. My fate. Her heart swelled, the bond a lifeline amid the chaos. They sat among the herbs, hands entwined, planning in whispers. We need allies, she suggested. Someone who knows the old ways, perhaps a seer or elder. Thorne agreed, his thumb caressing her wrist. There's an old crone in the eastern woods, neutral, wise in lore. We'll seek her tomorrow, under cover. As the sun set, their conversation turned personal again. Thorne admitted his deepest fear. If the ritual fails, and I turn feral, promise you'll end me. I couldn't live as a monster hurting you. Tears streamed down Elara's face. I promise nothing of the sort. We'll succeed, or find another way. Their kiss then was desperate, a fusion of love and defiance, bodies pressing close in the fading light. But as night fell, a servant slipped a note under her door. Beware the Alpha's hidden truth. The ritual demands a life. Unsigned, it chilled her to the core. Was Thorne withholding something fatal? Suspense thickened, the bond tested by secrets yet unveiled. The next day, as they prepared to venture to the crone, danger shadowed their steps, a betrayal brewing that could force a sacrifice neither anticipated.